Welcome to Relationship Building Connects with Confidence. And I'd love to see where everyone is in the world. That's always kind of fun, right? Because many of us, let's say this is happening in Denver, but if you're joining virtually, maybe you're somewhere else in the world. Right now, I'm in New York. Michelle is in, we have Oklahoma, we have Ohio, Maryland, South Carolina, California, Atlanta, Washington, Colorado, Nevada, on the train. Ooh, an unknown train. Nashville, New Brunswick, more Ohio and Portland. Amazing. And feel free, this is a networking workshop, but I'd love for you to actually make some new connections. So if you see someone in the chat and you're like, oh my gosh, we are in the same city, maybe you want to reach out to connect. You could do an in-person coffee. How about that? All right. So we will dive in with what we're covering today. So we are going to we're going to be covering networking myths and tips. And let me know in the chat. Uh, so these are labeled 1 through 5. Let me know what is of most interest to you. So that helps me tailor this presentation to make sure that you get the most out of it. So we have networking myths and tips, things that will help you out in your networking experience, things that may not really help you out, right? Things that are myths, not true. Then the second, we have crafting your elevator pitch. Who wants to fine tune how they introduce themselves? And then we have number 3, how to manage your energy to show up fully. So no more going to an event and immediately feeling like I need a nap or I have to go right now. This is not working out. We're going to give you some strategies to show up and feel really good about your networking experience. Okay. Okay, interesting. So thanks for letting me know that you're just seeing the title slide. Let me know, are you able to see a different slide now? Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay, so let's try this again. Okay, can you see the second slide now? Let me know in the chat. Yes. Okay, resounding yeses. Okay, amazing. So this should make it easier for you to let me know what you're most looking forward to. So we have number 1, networking myths and tips. Give me a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the chat, whatever you are most interested in. Then we have second, crafting your elevator pitch, what you're going to say when you walk into rooms. Okay, we have how to manage your energy to show up fully as number 3. I've seen a lot of 3s and 4s. Number 4 is how to maintain new connections. So once you show up at the event, great, you're there, that's half the battle. Then how do you actually make it count for you and effectively grow and expand your network? Okay, I have all of them. Let's see. And then the bonus. So this is something that will really help you in your career, where if we're going to go over the fundamentals of how to approach groups and how to make that really work for you, but who wants to skip the line? Who is curious about, wait, is there another way? How can I grow my network in a way that is not necessarily going up to individual people? We're going to go over those opportunities. Okay, amazing. We have lots of interest in 1 through 5, so you're in the right place. And for those of you that are not yet familiar with my work, hello there. My name is Stephanie Thoma, and I am a speaker coach for founders. And let's define speaking. Speaking is on stages, but it's also at networking events. It's also at dinner parties. It's in line at the grocery store. I am here to give you the tools to effectively present yourself in a way that is clear, confident, and able to get people on board with something that you're building if you're entrepreneurial, if you work at a company, or to gain new friendships because we all go further together. In a moment, I'll share my 4-step Connect with Confidence framework, and you'll get an even better idea of this process of going from feeling confident to making those connections and making them count. I also have been a speaker for quite a bit now. I've given my keynote over 250 times. I've published a couple of books. I have a podcast called Holistic Ambition. And I have been behind the scenes at TEDx San Francisco for a variety of years, studied sociology, the study of people, and I've hosted a high volume of events. So a lot of what we will go over today is based on my experience behind the scenes witnessing how people interact so that you can have an even more fun time doing that. However, let's take a look at baby Stephanie. So, who can relate to growing up and feeling a little bit painfully shy? Definitely, if networking was a thing when I was a kid, I would have not signed up for it. That would have not topped my list at all. Um, and yeah, grew up in a large family, got a little lost in the mix, and I stood out in ways that were not always celebrated. And I also tended to be a serial monogamist in friendship, having one friend at one time. And in school, the question that I was oftentimes asked was, why are you so quiet? How do you respond to a question like that? Maybe with silence, right? Okay, yeah, we have some fellow introverts in here. We also have fellow one of five. Amazing. And now I want to let you know about the Connect with Confidence framework. So, at a high level, we start with the baseline of calm. So, have you ever been in a situation where you meet someone and maybe they're trying to transmute, maybe it's been you, where you're trying to transmute the nerves into personability. However, it comes off as a bit manic. And the person in front of you, or maybe you're just like, I've transmuted it. I'm excited, but you're just nervous and it's not coming across in the best light. I'm an advocate for things like meditation, things like getting to your baseline of, oh, I feel really calm and collected in this moment. Because from there, we're going to build your confidence from that place. It's almost like a clean slate, and then you build your confidence on top of that. And then you're able to make connections from this calm, rooted, cal calm, confident place. And then you connect more deeply with people because you're not seeking anything from them. You're not looking to them to tell you that you're worth connecting with or that you're interesting or anything like that. You know who you are, you like who you are, and it gives others the opportunity to do the same. And then on top of the connection piece, we have impact because you're not just networking for the sake of networking. You're not going out there and meeting new people because I guess it's something to do. No, you have an intention, you have a purpose. So all of this gets tied together when you have aligned connections where you can actually help each other grow in ways that you wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to. Now we're going to dive on into networking myths. And also, I want to put a note here that if you have a question, feel free to, if anything's coming up for you during these slides, put a comment, put a question, and we will have ample time at the end for Q&A hot seat coaching. So that will be an opportunity for you to go into, let's say there's a scenario that's really relevant for you in a networking capacity. We'll be able to go over those a little bit later, and I'll give you a heads up when that happens. But for now, let me know in the chat, give me a one, two, three, if you either currently or if you ever have believed that in order to make networking work for you, you have to be interesting or you have to talk to everybody. You enter a room, 100 people, okay, you have to talk to all 100 of them. Or three, you have to be liked by everyone. Why even meet people if they're not going to totally like everything about you, right? Okay, so we have all, we have that number one that's resonating, we have three, we have two. Okay, so yeah, it's pretty clear that we have all at one point in time, either now or previously, felt these things to be true. So let's debunk this first networking myth of needing to be interesting. So this is the image of the most interesting man in the world. And even you can probably think of a few people in your own life who are perceived as interesting. Maybe you don't have a lot of context, but you see pictures of them on social media and they're climbing a mountain. They're on another international trip and they're on a yacht. It's like, wow, that's cool. How'd that happen? And they are intriguing to you and it's a very curated image, even if you don't really know it's below the surface. And another thing is you may not actually feel totally connected with them. That's where the networking truth comes in. Instead of wanting to be interesting and curating your life for other people to see it and have a certain impression, what if you were interested? So this is actually taking the pressure off if you have ever felt the need to show up in a really interesting way. And it's one thing if you're living your life and then, oh, yeah, these are some things that I've done if people tend to ask. But if that feels like a lot of pressure for you and you're like, hey, I'm in the zone, I'm doing my thing, I'm working, maybe you have a family, you got a lot of stuff going on, then actually let's take the pressure off of you and be interested in other people. Be really good at those open-ended questions. We'll go into that in a little bit. And this is the difference between being self-aware and being self-conscious. So when we talk about being self-aware, it's knowing where you physically are. That's good to be aware of, right? Like, okay, right now I'm sitting in a chair. I'm in this city. I'm at this event. And I'm listening to this person speak about this thing. Having a sense of orientation and knowing where you are, what you're doing, versus self-conscious is taking it a few steps too far. It doesn't really benefit us to, do I have something in my teeth? Or you're wondering, oh, wait, is my posture okay? Am I looking confident enough? Right? So I'd like to encourage you to sort of flip that script from how am I showing up? Is it okay? To sure, put in the prep work, make sure, check your teeth in advance, wear an outfit that you feel confident in. And then that allows you to step into rooms and have that genuine interest for other people because you know that you're okay. Oh my gosh. Yes. I mean, hey, posture is a good thing, especially if you're watching us at home. Go ahead and, roll those shoulders back. Networking myth number two. You have to talk to as many people as possible. Who has social anxiety looking at this image? Where there can be this concept of, well, I don't really have a networking strategy. That feels kind of gross. So I might as well just talk to everyone because everyone is equally as important. And I don't want to miss out FOMO, right? This idea of what if there's someone in the room where we could give each other a certain opportunity? I just need to get through everyone in the room. And maybe that doesn't feel great, right? Because it's kind of commodifying people in a way. However, yeah, Catherine says, not a fan of crowds. So a networking tip is to make a new friend. And it doesn't mean the very first person you speak with, you're going to click with, and it's going to be very clear that, oh, this is my new friend. However, that could happen, but it becomes a sort of dance where you interject yourself into groups. We'll go into how to do that in a moment. And you are attuned to yourself to the point where you know when you click. You know when you're speaking with someone if, oh, and maybe there's a warm-up period. But every now and then you'll be speaking with a small group of people, one person, and you're really hitting it off. And it doesn't always mean that you spend the entire event just talking to that one person, but certainly you're going deep versus wide. So then let's say you get a connection request on LinkedIn and someone says, oh, hey, I noticed that you are connected with Jeff. Instead of you saying, oh, I don't even know who Jeff is, they heard my elevator pitch in a group setting and I heard theirs, you're able to say, oh, yeah, we had a great conversation at this conference. And then you're able to actually have more social value, more social currency, and you are effectively becoming a better connector because you actually know people and they actually know you. You're allowing that to happen. Okay, the third networking myth is you have to be liked by everyone. So I know this came up in the chat where some people were like, yep, that seems like it's true. Like you just have to be this person that somehow everyone likes, but you're also authentic and have your quirks, but no one seems to have a problem with it and everyone loves it. And then, yeah, that's the kind of person that should be networking. Okay, well, let's go into some reframes. So has anyone in this room ever been in sales, either as a dedicated role or an aspect of their role? And we are at the Grant Professional Summit, so I would say yes, whether you know it or not, you're doing some sort of sales to get people on board with what you're doing and who you're helping and all of that. So such a powerful reframe in sales that I'd like to introduce to this conversation is if someone doesn't seem super interested in you or what you have to say, it doesn't mean that they will always feel that way. So, an example of this is I was at a dinner party in San Francisco years ago. I sat next to this woman and I said, hi, trying to start a conversation. And she just kind of looked at me a little side eye, hi. And she was very obviously not interested in engaging. And I'm having conversation with other people. And I think I tried maybe one more time to engage her in an open-ended question, and it just really wasn't going anywhere. And instead of taking it personally, I decided I'm just going to redirect my energy. And she may be going through something, but I'm going to be less curious about what's going on with her and more curious about the other people in the space that seem more open to connecting right now. And then what do you know? Maybe 3 years later, I realize that we're both in New York. And I think she even reaches out to me, this is during COVID, and says, "Oh, hey, we should get together for coffee. I see you're in town." And then we actually develop a friendship and we're hanging out every week. And then it ends up coming out. She says at one point, I was going through a situation where someone that I met didn't take well to me. And there was kind of a crunchiness to that. And I brought it up to her. And she said, "Hey, to be honest, when I first met you, I did not like you." So I'm not here to say that when people first meet you, it's not that they don't like you. Maybe they actually don't like you, but it's up to you how you want to take it in or redirect your focus. And it's not this severe, like, oh my gosh, turn my back to her and completely cut her off, block her. It's just like, oh, interesting. But having this mindset of, okay, maybe this isn't how it's always going to be, but I'm just not feeling a strong resonance, so I'm going to move on. But going back to that conversation, then she said, "Well, I'm so glad that I got took the opportunity to get to know you because now I realize that you just embody some of the things that I wish I embodied, like a bit more confidence." So it's not always straightforward. It's not black and white. So when we make space for the gray, I can even give you 10 other examples of times where I didn't indulge in the seemingly negative thing right in front of me and allowed it to transform and transmute itself over time. So when we're networking, it's a long game. It's not about the instant gratification of people validating that you're this amazing person in front of them. It's and sometimes when you see people repeatedly over time, there tends to be this opportunity to actually like people more because psychologically there would be too much dissonance to see someone so often and not like them every single time. So that's some food for thought there. And I also want to bring up being a caring person. So who in the chat identifies with being a caring person? Like in general, like yes, I care. I care about others. I care about the world. I care about a cause. So a reframe here is it's not like you should cut off your caring muscle. I'm not here to say be the person that cares less. What is that song by Ben Fold? The Battle of Who Could Care Less. We are not battling for that. Okay? I'm not advocating for just turn off your caring. However, what I illustrated in that story earlier is that there's an opportunity for us to care more about other things than we do about the things that could put us in a spiral. So I'd like for you to even, you can write in the chat or contemplate for yourself a time when either you redirected your focus or you didn't even realize something wasn't going that well, and then later on it turned out differently. Or maybe there was a time where you learned a hard lesson and maybe you wanted that instant gratification of like, oh, hey, it seems like this isn't going well, or it seems like this. And then that effectively cemented that perception and that reality by calling it out and being very sensitive to it. All right. So now, wait, I want to be sure that we're reading the chat. Okay. So Rebecca says, I get in my head about my age and position in life. I often think, oh, they don't want to talk to me, a 30-year-old. They're much older with more experience. Why would they talk to me? As a childless person, I also find it difficult to connect with parents. I need to find something everyone can relate to. These are good reminders. I need to move past these worries. Yes, how many people have these ideas that, oh, well, because of my age, we can't connect, or oh, because they have kids and I don't, or vice versa, that it's going to be harder to connect. There are so many examples of our perception feeding our reality. And if we have this awareness of, ooh, these are things that disconnect me from people, I'd like you to question, is that true? Is that true? Because when it comes to maturity, when it comes to where you are in your career, certainly there are some tracks and there are some industries where it's very clear that typically when you're early stage, this is where you are, and then you get to this level. But in this day and age, there's actually opportunity for people to be at all stages. There are people that are pivoting that would be senior level somewhere else that are now entry level. There are people who could be entry level, but maybe they attained a certain level of expertise and now they're senior level. So I would like to encourage you to rethink these things. And then, people that have children or that don't, there are so many other topics to connect on. So I would encourage you to get curious about, okay, what, like they have kids, that's a big part of their life, but what else are they interested in? Maybe they do have some other interests. You can kind of suss that out, figure that out. And Cara says, my first job out of college was in individual fundraising. And my biggest learning from it was that if a conversation doesn't go well or is awkward, that doesn't say anything about the people in the conversation. Conversations can be awkward, but the individual people aren't. Yes. So this is attribution, not saying, ooh, this person is bad, this person is awkward, this person is wrong. It's like, oh, interesting. This dynamic was kind of weird. And maybe we can move on from that because sometimes it's a unique combination of two people coming together. You will not hear me say, oh, that person is toxic, for example, right? Because it's like, actually, maybe they have a tendency to not mesh well with certain people. And I will say, some people have a tendency to not mesh well with more people than not. So it's always about the combination. So thank you for bringing that up, Cara. And now, the moment that some of you have been waiting for, your elevator pitch formula. So this is an opportunity to get really clear on your I help statement. And it doesn't mean that you say this and then the conversation's over. So this formula is I am name, and feel free to type yours in the chat to test this out. I am name, and then your role, or you're the founder of XYZ company, or you work at XYZ place and you help. So this is your audience. And then you want to talk about a specific result. And then you could say through your unique method or offering. So an example here. Oh, and by the way, I always advocate for saying your full name, your first and your last name. The reason being, I don't know about your name, but my name is super common. It is not uncommon to have two Stephanies in a room. So I will say Stephanie Thoma. And it also helps people remember if, let's say, you had a conversation, but somehow you didn't get contact information, and I'll let you know how to avoid that situation a little later. You'll be in a position to have them be like, oh, okay, it was Cara Smith, it was Stephanie Thoma, it was Lisa Brand, having that extra name recognition that becomes possible later on. So, for example, I'm Stephanie Thoma, public speaking coach for founders, and I help my clients confidently share their signature talk. Okay. So yeah, feel free if you're at home, then definitely jot this down. And I'd also like you to practice saying it out loud because the idea is that this becomes so second nature to you. And some people draft elevator pitches that are paragraphs long and that are full stories. And let's get acquainted with the concept of an elevator. You don't have 10 minutes, you don't even have sometimes 1 minute to say effectively what you do. So notice in this example here, I'm not going into, oh, and we use my 4-step framework and we do this and we do that. People have an opportunity to take that in or even ask a question and say, oh, interesting. Okay, their signature talk. What do you mean by that? Or, oh, what's an example? And then it allows the conversation to keep going. So let's see. Colleen says, I tend to downplay my work when I say things like this. When you say things like what? Feel free to elaborate so I can go into a little more depth with what you shared. And then Melanie says, okay, I am Melanie Spencer, founder of Greater Good Grants. I help small and mid-sized organizations win grants to fulfill their mission by building their external funding capacity. Ooh, that is so clear. See, some people, I'm sure you remember when tech was a little more new and everyone was calling themselves a ninja. And people were like, oh yeah, like I'm a kung fu fighter of this. And you're like, okay, that's cute, but what do you mean? Like, what do you actually do? So it's about, clear is kind, to quote Brene Brown. Oh my gosh. Okay. Colleen says, I'm the associate dean and I do a lot of paperwork and writing. That's a way to get a laugh. I mean, and let's bring this up. It's not about being super stuffy and serious. if you said that with a straight face, Colleen, you get a laugh. And then you could say, okay, well, what I really mean is, and then you say the real pitch. There's no right or wrong way, but infusing humor when you can, that's fun. I would say try that out once and see how that goes. Okay, and now when it comes to approaching people, this is a question that I get a lot. How many of us have entered a room and then you wonder, okay, what do I do now? I'm standing in this room, there are people all around me, and I guess I'm supposed to talk to people now, but everyone seems to be in conversation already. My recommendation, it may be counterintuitive. I'm not going to ask you to approach a group of two people, instead a group of three. The reason for this is there's a possible third wheel. It's likely that there's someone in the vicinity of that conversation that is a little less engaged. And I also am not advocating for you walking up to them and saying, hey, and then your elevator pitch rallying off. How many of us like to be invited in? Does that feel good? How many of us would like to walk up and have someone literally say, oh, what's your name? Or, oh, join us. So here's how you do that. Look at their shoes, and not necessarily to gauge their financial status, but there's going to be a gap in between feet. And that is actually where you go, not directly. You're going to be on the outskirts of the circle or the square, so to speak. So, this is something that you can be aware of if you are in a small group, where maybe you want to have your body a little outturned so that if someone walks up to you, they can even subconsciously look at the gap and see, oh, I would fit in there. Cool. You're creating an opening. So, there's a colleague in the networking space called Robbie Samuels, and he calls this a croissant versus a bagel. So, that's a very clear visual image, right? Of having that opening that sometimes it's there without people even realizing it. But at other times, you can actually create it to help other people feel comfortable approaching. And then, so you're on the outskirts of this circle, and what I'd like you to do is make eye contact with people and a light nod. And people find this so amusing typically because they're used to people barging in and completely disrupting the flow. And you might even get a slight smile from the person who's currently speaking because they're like, oh, nice, I'm not being interrupted. But then what happens more times than not is someone else actually interrupts for you because they feel so uncomfortable with you just standing there. So say, oh, hey, welcome, what's your name? And it's up to you to just be receptive to that. And then you could even begin to add to the existing conversation and allow things to flow in the way that it was flowing. However, 10% of the time, you will be completely ignored. That is based on my empirical experience. So it's one of those things where if you are on the outskirts of a circle, I mean, there are reasons, right? Maybe they were having a more private conversation. Why they're having that publicly at a networking event, I do not know. Or maybe they all work on the same team. And yeah, maybe that is why they're having that private conversation in a very public space. But if that ever happens and you're making eye contact and you're nodding, and let's say people are not nodding back, there are not smiles, you're not getting that eye contact, then give it a little bit. But if no one makes a gesture towards you, or there is not a pause where you could interject into the conversation, for example, then that's simply your cue to leave that circle. And you don't have to say bye because you didn't really say hi. And then just tell yourself that's the 10%. But 90% of the time, this is going to be a strategy that gets you what you want, which is connection with other people. Okay. Oh, great. So we have more examples of elevator pitches. Keep those coming because I'm sure there's someone else in the space that is going to read that and get some inspiration. Okay. And now we have managing your energy. So let me know in the chat, have you ever been at a networking event and maybe things are going pretty well? You're like, okay, I'm doing the thing, I'm talking with the people, getting business cards, whatever it is. And then you hit a wall and it becomes very clear to yourself that, okay, I have to leave now. I've had enough. This is done. So, if you have ever had that experience of almost like Energizer Bunny runs out of battery, I want to let you in on a strategy that can help you from hitting the wall so that you're able to show up fully. And this is if you do identify as having lower energy reserves because of, personal things in your life. It could be relationships, it could be circumstances, it could be health, whatever it is. This is going to be really beneficial to you. And it actually, I created this concept of a solitude sandwich, which I'll go into in a moment, during Q&A at one of my workshops years ago now. So during Q&A, I was giving a presentation called Networking for Introverts, and the person asking the question, raises the hand, and I say, "Oh, hey, yeah, what's your question?" And they ask, "Why is it that someone who is so obviously an extrovert is giving a presentation on introversion?" A little confronting. And in that same moment, I decided to answer his question with another question. And I asked, "Well, what do you think I was doing before this?" And he said, "Well, maybe you were at a dinner party." And I said, "No, I was reading in the lobby." And then I asked, "Well, what do you think I'll be doing after this?" And he said, "Maybe going to an after party." And I was like, "Not aware of that after party." But actually, my plan is to meditate and read and call it a night. So, what I illustrated there is this concept of having two pieces of solitude on either end of an activity. You can use this in public speaking, you can use this in networking. And maybe you want big Texas style toast where you're spending a whole day or an entire morning or afternoon just not really talking to people and doing things like going on a walk or doing more admin work if you have that on your plate. And then you're showing up fully at the event or at the time when it really matters, to the point where your vitality and your energy is so present that people are thinking cool things about you, like, "Oh my gosh, like, who is that?" You're really bringing it, so to speak, right? Like, who wants to have that experience if you haven't already, or maybe have it more consistently, where you feel like I'm showing up as the best, most present version of myself. So then some people might think, "Oh, it's enough to have an open faced sandwich," but I would say bring on the metaphorical carbs, okay? Go ahead and put the other piece of bread on that sandwich, because it effectively helps you really maintain that energy where you could be buzzing, you could be on a sort of high. When you've made some really good connections, it feels like, "Ooh, what's possible now?" Certainly more than before this evening or this event or whenever it was. So, intentionally having a solitary activity to integrate what just happened can be really valuable. And I'm an advocate for meditation and for taking time to even mindfully breathe, like breathing in through the nose for 4 counts and pausing and then exhaling through the mouth for 4 counts. And you can even do that in public, people won't really notice. Just whatever gets you to a place of feeling more centered and going back to the connect with confidence framework, embodying that sense of calm. So then you can feel authentically confident and then connect with people from that place where it's like, "Oh, look at this person in front of me who is so grounded and knows themselves and knows the value of what they're offering. Interesting. I think I might want to collaborate with them." And we also have, okay, towards the end of the event, who has ever had the experience of, "Oh, great, I had this conversation," and then maybe someone says, "See you around." "Oh, I'm sure I'll see you at the next one." Maybe you've been this person that said that, and there's nothing wrong with it. However, leaving things to chance is not what I would recommend in a networking capacity, because, yeah, maybe you will see them around, but maybe you won't. So, this is something that people can say sometimes if they're simply not used to networking effectively. They could just think, "Oh, well, now it would be awkward. I don't want to get out my phone. I don't want to feel salesy by being like, let's connect on LinkedIn." So they might just be like, "Well, awesome. So great to get to connect. Bye." Or, so I want you to have this awareness of things sometimes are only as awkward as you make it. So you might even want to practice with a friend, with a loved one, where where let's say you've had a good conversation, and don't wait until the end. Because sometimes, let's say if there's a speaker and or you're in line for the restroom, some people get this idea that, oh, if I see them at the end of the event, then I'll ask for their contact. Or there's this feeling of that being the end interaction when it can be, but it doesn't have to be. So if while you're talking, you bring up, oh, actually, this resource I think could really help you. Then in that moment, oh, let me go ahead and, and email it to you or send it to you on LinkedIn. Or a more open-ended approach is, oh, what's the best way to connect with you? And then from there, you pull up the LinkedIn app if you don't already have it. And then who has ever used the QR code function? So this really comes in handy if there's any concern about misspelling someone's name, or if honestly you forgot someone's name and you don't want to bring that to their attention, then perfect. All you do is get your QR code out and it's awkwardly in the search bar. So you'll want to go in the search bar of the app and then click on the right part, and then you'll have the opportunity to scan or be scanned. So, okay, cool. We're getting some more comments here. People are networking in the chat. Not to give you FOMO if you didn't attend live, but just saying. And then Rebecca says, it's been interesting. In my previous city, DC, it would take a good amount of initial conversation to exchange contact information and business cards. In my current city of Cincinnati, many people have been giving me their business card right after their introduction or pitch, which has been so nice. And there is a fine line. So, and you have to take on a case by case basis, right? Some people, they will literally say their name and be like, here's my business card. And for some people, they think that's efficient. Other people are like, that was kind of strange. And I'm of the, so what I would recommend is that it's somewhere in between, where it's not like, wow, we were just talking for over an hour and had a heart to heart. Now you can have my business card. No, not that. But also, it's not like, oh, hi, I'm Bill. Hi, I'm Lucy. And then like you're giving your card in the same breath. It's nice to have some sort of connection. And maybe that means you're talking about something that is not necessarily even work related. I'd like you to get away from talking about the weather, from talking about traffic. Those are things that people so commonly bring up. And a reason that I recommend not starting with those things is because when people bring up these sort of trite experiences, typically it could be, oh, the weather's so beautiful, but more likely than not, it's like, oh my gosh, that rain. Or with the traffic, it's rarely, wow, it was such a breeze getting over here today. As you know, it's more likely going to be something like, oh my gosh, I can't, it drove me nuts how long it took me to get here today. And I missed the first session. And then it's like, it's a downward spiral. It's it's not about being toxically positive and like, wow, rainbows, butterflies, but it's about allowing connections to start off on a positive foot. However, the connection begins can actually paint the picture for how the relationship goes. And you have most likely heard you do not have a second chance to make a first impression. So, especially if you want more happiness in your life, if you want things to be going better than they are, then this is a strategy that you can use, being really intentional about your entry point and making it something positively skewed. So, I'd like to hear in the chat, what are some things you could bring up that are not the weather, that are not traffic? Right? Those seem to be some of the most common low-hanging fruit in networking introduction conversations. Okay, and as we're going, oh, hey, there you go. Do you have any great vacations planned? And this is a concept that I call a conversational sponge. And that means that it's an open-ended question. And this was illustrated beautifully by Michelle. Do you have any great vacations planned? Yes. And I mean, hey, it's one of those things where maybe someone is going on a trip. I don't know, and it's not a happy trip. Maybe something bad happened. So I guess you're making like, hey, do you have anything that, or another way to say it is, do you have any trips that you're looking forward to coming up? And then even if someone, let's say they don't travel and they're like, no, I wish I did. Then turn that around. Say, oh, okay, well, cool. Where was the last place that you went that you had fun at? And then you could say, even locally. So it's not about, because, some people travel, some people don't. There is a way, no matter how someone responds, to allow the connection to continue, where it's less about, oh, hey, give me this story to impress me, and more about meeting them where they're at to have a chance at connecting. Because when people are asked open-ended questions, if they're genuinely excited about it, it'll be a marker of success for you in terms of like, oh, great, I'm connecting with them and they're excited about this thing. Maybe I'm excited about that too, and you have that in common. But if that doesn't come off right away, a question I've gotten in the past is around, oh my gosh, this person on my team is so into sports, and I do not even know like the difference between a football and a baseball, you know? So there are ways to connect with people and to guide the conversation to the nuances beyond. So, for example, with travel and vacations, someone who doesn't take vacations or travel traditionally, you can still bring up places in their community that they like to go to. And for example, if someone is really into sports and you are one of those non-sport people, then you can bring up the aspect of camaraderie. Maybe you're very community minded and you can ask about, oh, interesting. When was the last time that you had a lot of fun, like with the camaraderie of being at a game, and you can go into that sort of experience. And oh yeah, asking about holidays, hobbies. And then Ashley says, tell me about your work and your organization. So you can do that. That is more traditional networking where people are like, what do you do? And how do you do it? You know, right? But I would say that that is a way to be straight to the point. However, to establish more genuine rapport, it's not always about small talk, right? It's you could even keep it as open-ended as what are you looking forward to most these days? And then someone who is more traditionally work-minded, they're going to tell you about a work project. Or someone who has something top of mind that they're feeling giddy about, they're going to bring that up. So my what I encourage you to do is to ask questions from a genuine place of curiosity. You know, a way to even rephrase the traditional "what do you do?" or "tell me about your organization" or work is to get curious about the why. This is how to deepen the connection with that initial communication point, where it's like, oh, so interesting. What drew you to your current cause? Or, you know what I mean? Eliciting stories from people versus the elevator pitch. And I know it's kind of funny because we just went over how to do the elevator pitch, and that certainly does serve a purpose. Let's say if you're going around the room and everyone is like, "Oh, hey, say your name and where you work," then yes, you don't need to go into a story or an open-ended question in that scenario, obviously. But this is more for when you're free mingling and you can do and say anything you want. Let's get a little more creative to be able to connect a little more deeply. And okay, we have Anne Marie says aquarium person here. So low hanging fruit. What's your favorite animal here? That's fun. See, like just this is something I would like to encourage you. Just have fun with it. There really is no right or wrong, but if there's a go-to that you usually do, if it's working for you, then sure, maybe you continue it. Or if you're thinking, maybe there's a better way, maybe there's a different way, then try out these questions. In the chat, we have a lot of good ones coming in. Oh yeah, new restaurants. That's a fun one that Cara brought up. And then Bradley says, is talking about the topic from previous session of the conference effective or is it too formal? No, if you really enjoyed the content, then and something resonated with you, then certainly bring it up. When you're at a conference of industry professionals and you all really enjoy and appreciate the subject matter, then it's not like you need to avoid that. That's why it's like, sure, you could ask about their life in general, or if you're at a conference and if there's an amazing keynote speaker, then turning to the person next to you, like, oh my goodness, that was amazing. And then to ask, what was your favorite part of their talk? And this could be as you're walking out. Certainly connect on that as well. And oh, yeah, AJ says, I love to hear about people's pets. Olivia asks, where are you from? Oh, yeah, when people are traveling into conferences, Ashley says, yes, I often ask, tell me why you started in your line of work or at your organization. Yes, that elicits stories. Amazing. So when it comes to the follow-up, so we earlier, quite a few of you were interested in how to maintain connections. So what I would like you to do is follow up within 24 hours. So what I do at events is I have the connections on the LinkedIn app, and then that night before I go to sleep, I will go through and send personalized messages. Hey, so and so, great to meet you at the event name. And then put a personal detail, something about your conversation, something that was memorable. And what that does is, let's say if you would like to continue the conversation, then you can also have a call to action. You can say it would be great to have a connection call. Let me know if you're open to it within the next couple of weeks. And then if they are open to it, then send your calendar link. I do not recommend sending your calendar link without them saying, yes, I would like that, because it can come off as spammy and less relationship first and more like, hey, here's the call. And then you make it clear it's a connection call because some people have been burned in the past. And whenever they get a link, they're like, oh my gosh, this person's going to pitch me. So having that clarity and say, oh yeah, it's a connection call to get to know you and what you're working on better. And then, yeah, the reason why I say getting it on the calendar within a couple of weeks is because just think about your past experiences. When you've met someone, if you haven't connected again, virtually or in person within a couple of weeks, is it ever going to happen? People are busy. It can, but especially for a coffee chat, so I recently made the switch from 30 to 15-minute meetings. So if you haven't already done that, you may consider it to be able to have a check-in or go a little bit deeper. For first meetings, I like to have 15 minutes. And then for more in-depth meetings, maybe 30 to 60. And we talked about skipping the line earlier. So skipping the line in a networking capacity is maybe you don't always need to be the person going up to that group of three and saying hi. And there are a couple ways to do that. One of them is through community building. So you can decide to plug yourself into existing organizations. So let's say that there is a grant professionals networking series, then maybe you say, oh, yeah, I'd like to be the chapter lead. And you have that visibility by being the leader of that community. Or maybe you create your own. So, an example of one that I've created is called Women Creating in Real Life Community Panel, because I wanted to connect with more community leaders in my city. So, I was like, well, I'll put them on a panel and I'll moderate that. Let's go. And the idea here is to fill in holes in the market offerings of your existing organization or your city. So if you're self-employed, then the world is your oyster. Go ahead and you can make any sort of event that you want to and curate, people that you want to connect with, find a way to celebrate them and elevate them. And when it comes to, let's say, if you're in an existing organization, what you might consider doing instead is bringing this up to your organization. And maybe you want to have a club that meets every month or so, where there's let's say, a subgroup within your organization where it can be unwork related, it can be hobby related. It really gets to be whatever you want it to be. And the idea is that you are the person that brings people together. People gain awareness of the fact that you are bringing them together. And then there are invitations that can come your way because of that heightened visibility. And let me know in the chat if you have ever been a community leader or builder. Let us know what that is, if you're currently doing it, or what it was if you're not doing it anymore. And last but not least, how to cut the line is public speaking. So I'd like to know in the chat, is anyone here a public speaker? So this can be in the form of giving a keynote talk. It can be being on a panel discussion. And for those of you that are self-employed, this is a great way to give your business even greater credibility and visibility. Same with if you are working at a company. But of course, you would need to get permission that you can represent them on a panel, for example, or in a talk. And you want to identify what is the topic that you're an expert in. And then you want to create a signature talk. Maybe there is a 60-minute version, a 90-minute version, a 10-minute version, and even a 5-minute version that you can give. The shorter versions, maybe you'll be able to give those without slides, right? And from there, you want to create a tour schedule and be really intentional with getting the same talk out there multiple times, and assuming that your talk is well produced. Every time you give the talk, it should be leading to another opportunity, whether it be from your back end offer, what your company offers, or with other speaking opportunities that can even be paid. Okay, excuse me, this slide is a little funky. but these QR codes are going to work for you. So the QR code in the upper right is for a free chat with me. So this is a clarity call where it's 1 hour and you'll get one takeaway, one bold action that you can take that can help move the needle for you in your networking, in your speaking, in your community building. And this is something that will be so instrumental if, let's say, you have a more specific question that we didn't get to go over during Q&A. Certainly, if you're watching the replay and you never had that opportunity, then go ahead and scan the upper right QR code, and then the bottom one is to get a free chapter of my book, Confident Introvert. It's about understanding your personality before connecting with others. Again, going with that Connect with Confidence framework, where the bottom level is calm, confidence, connection, and then impact, because that's why we're here. We're here to make a difference and to make an impact greater than ourselves. And I'll also put them in the chat in case there's anything funky with tech. So So the calendar link is tidycal.com/Stephanie Thoma /clarity. You can also go to stephaniethoma.com/coaching. And then for the free chapter, that'll be stephaniethoma.com/free chapter. And now we do have some time for Q&A. And actually, let me know. I know we have a meeting leader in here. Do we have 5 minutes until the top of the hour? Can we go a little over? Feel free to either unmute yourself or if you want to type in the chat. But let's get these questions going. And if we do just have 5 minutes, then we can certainly get through at least a couple. Okay. And we already have a question from Cara. Amazing. Um, let's see. But let's read this comment from Catherine first. So, not sure if it counts, but I started a book club with some coworkers. We no longer work at the same company, but stay in touch this way. That's great. And ideally, when networking, your company is your built-in network. That's the easiest, assuming that you're in the office or even on Slack together. You will have the easiest and most natural access to those people at that time. But how great that Catherine has a book club that has transcended where she is working at that specific time. And then Kara asks, do you have advice about how to prioritize making time for networking and coffee chats in the work week? I work at an organization, so sometimes I feel like it's unfair to my team when I'm taking time for my own personal networking. Okay, so let's define personal versus organizational networking. So we could argue that all networking is personal networking. However, if you are at a conference and your company sent you there, even if you're not talking about work, you're actually still networking on behalf of your work. So it depends on the subject matter of what you intend to cover or how the connection can take shape. So if this connection that you've made is completely unrelated to your work and you know that you're going to have a conversation about, I don't know, making music in GarageBand, then yeah, that needs to be on your personal time. However, if they work at an organization, that would be a great partner for the company that you work at. Even if you don't talk 100% about work, you are strengthening that relationship. And it's up to you to structure the networking conversation so it doesn't become 15, 20, 30, 1 hour of talking about personal stuff. Certainly starting out the conversation that way can help keep the connection warm and feeling like it's not completely transactional and all of that. But then you want to, and some people like to have this sort of rule for themselves, or at least at the halfway point, you need to intentionally transition and say, oh, I'd love to talk more about your dog. Like, they're so cute. I'd love to see more pictures later. But I actually think if we were to talk about, XYZ business related thing, that we could actually have something, a really cool partnership take place or begin to happen here. Okay. And now we have Rebecca. Do you have any tips for digital connection best practices for cold emails? I'm an overthinker, or I overthink whether I sound inauthentic. Okay, so for cold emails, I would say, let's see, any tips for digital connection, like best practices for cold emails? So when it comes to sending a cold email, I mean, if that's a part of your strategy, maybe you want to have some sense of warmth so it feels less cold where you've done a little bit of research and maybe you know something you have in common. I mean, I am an advocate of LinkedIn outreach when you can. It is a little more personal and you can and my preference for LinkedIn connections is engage with their content publicly, assuming that they have posted content, and make sure that it's thoughtful. It's not like, great job, Jane. It's like, okay, something actually of substance where you're saying, oh, I really appreciate this point because, and I would add blank. So you're actually contributing to a larger, richer conversation. So go ahead and comment on their recent posts, and then send an invitation. And this is where some people have different opinions, but I would say don't write anything in the invitation on LinkedIn because so many people are used to, oh, hey, do you want to increase your XYZ? Do you want like greater revenue in your business? It's like, okay, stop, enough. You're being pitch slapped. So the idea is that you're engaging and then you send the connection request and then you can have a spreadsheet, get fancy with it, right? And then if you can know who you reached out to. And then let's say that they don't add you back right away, but you can say, oh, look, they posted another post. You go ahead and you comment thoughtfully again. And this just becomes a weekly ritual. And and then I think it'll be easier to transition a LinkedIn connection that opts in and connects with you into a connection call. So, and then of course, there is strategy and there's nuances around those connection calls and turning them into business and the timeline and all of that. So, having a clarity call with me is one way that I can help you strengthen that. And that is a free 1 hour call that I'm offering attendees of this session. So, let's see. And then, yeah, to even, I want to touch on you overthink sounding inauthentic. So, there is an element of sales in here. We touched on sales earlier. Sales is pretty much inherent in almost any job that you have where you're getting buy-in of people to want to donate money to your cause or to want to invest their time or energy or resources into you or something that is adjacent to you that you're working on. So it's important to not convolute that a cause has something to gain, even financially, with inauthenticity. It doesn't mean that it's inauthentic. So let's also, would it be more authentic if, let's say, you're connecting with someone and you have no ulterior motive? You don't want anything from them. You don't even know who they are. You just want to talk to them because you're like, I just got a hunch. Okay, who really has time for that? You could do that. And I think very early stage networkers that are in college, for example, they can afford to do that because they're like, I don't even know what I want to be when I grow up. Here we are. Let's go in this room and talk to anyone and see what happens. But when you are further along in your career, it makes sense to be more strategic for you. So maybe you are having a higher volume of connection calls, but there are steps that you can take to ensure that those connection calls are actually only with people that you could potentially partner with, for example. There are ways to go about that. And now we have, let's see, we have Nicole that says, I'm trying to have coffee meetups with funder contacts, but sometimes my mind goes blank on what to talk about during the meeting or the reason I'm asking them to have the coffee meetup in the first place. Suggestions. So, especially if it's virtual, and let's clarify, is this virtual? One of the great aspects of having virtual conversations is you can have a cheat sheet. And actually, even in person, you can. So, if there is a key intention you have for the meeting, go ahead and have it on your screen. And using a note taker is great. In this day and age, especially with virtual conversations, you don't need to be there taking notes unless you think it would help you if you're wanting to propose a solution at the end of the call. And I would always say get an opt-in. So, for example, let's say you have the conversation and then you say, oh, actually, I think that I can help you with this. Are you interested in learning how? And then let them say yes. And then you move onward. And that preserves the integrity of the connection. But yeah, you're essentially hearing through exactly what they need. And then you're able to say, oh, yeah, these are the ways that I can help you. And then it kind of turns into a little more of a sales call. So, and yeah, you're mentioning, Michelle, that you're specifically meeting with funder contacts. So people that could potentially fund your business. So I'd say being clear on not only how what you're up to is a value add for them, but also do your homework and bring up tidbits like, oh, I noticed that you have been a part of XYZ, and actually we're a bit similar to them in these ways. And it becomes illuminating the gaps. It's letting them know that, oh, like I value your time. I did my research. I know a bit about you. And here are some ways that we could work together where it's less about here's how you can hire me, here's how you can give me top dollar because I deserve it. It's more about like, oh yeah, like you need this, I have this, yeah, let's explore if this is something that we can do. And this comes down to also really understanding your value and how even if you're in a place to receive funding, it's not for you specifically, it's for the cause. And if it's a cause that both you and the person on the other end of the line believe in, then it becomes so much more streamlined. And Cara says, I usually approach it as sharing updates about our programs and greatest needs. And this year, I've been trying to share info about the effects of changing federal funding and why their private funding is more important than ever. But I've also tried to learn which funders will get annoyed by what kind of outreach. Some of them don't want that kind of check-in. Yeah, so you may have heard of report versus rapport. So Deborah Tannen, a sociology researcher in the 70s, talks a lot about some people. And if I were to say this in a different way. So report is more give me the facts. That's a bit more New York, right? And then rapport is a little more Southern, where it's like, hey, like, oh, how's the kids? How's this going? So you need to find out what style of communication the person you're speaking with prefers. Do they want to get down to business or do they want to have a bit more of that personal connection before diving in? So people who tend to be really busy, maybe they just literally want the call to kick off. Oh, hey, so I understand you have this problem. Ready for me to share how I can help, or that sort of thing, where you just dive in. Okay, Bradley says, may you offer any cold call tips, reaching out one on one to practical strangers? Okay, but you've heard of them from other coworkers or associates. Okay, so this is where it's a cold call, but you've heard of them before from people that you know. Well, then my question for you is why wouldn't you have that mutual connection connect you? So a warm intro is so much easier to grow and maintain than completely cold outreach. And let's say that this person, for whatever reason, cannot connect you, then even if you were to say, um, in an email, oh, I noticed that you and my colleague so and so are connected, and I think there would be value in us connecting as well. And here's why. You know, there are ways to kind of facilitate that warmth for yourself, but there's nothing like a mutual where, let's say, their email is already in the clear with them. They already have some threads going for them to say, "Oh, hey, John, I thought that you'd really hit it off with Bradley, and I'll leave you two to it." And then, okay, Bradley goes on to say, less of wanting to connect to host a large event with speakers or panel and more of wanting to have a one-on-one conversation. Yes. So, I mean, let's see. Let me know. It sounds like you're wanting to connect with someone who may be hard to reach, someone who where you have mutual connection. So that tip that I gave earlier still stands. Um, but, you know, another offering. So this is actually going back to how I recommended doing 15-minute meetings with people that you don't really know well. That can be for yourself, but also for them. If you're able to suggest a 15-minute meeting and you effectively lead the meeting with the key points that you want to cover, the key questions that you want to ask, and you're very succinct and concise, it can be an easier yes for someone where sometimes even 30 minutes or certainly 60 minutes can feel daunting when they don't totally understand the value of what you're going to propose, where you can just really set it out for this person. Ideally, you get the warm intro. If you don't, then mention the common connection, and maybe get the buy-in of the person that you'd mention. It just depends. If this person's completely unresponsive, what can you do? But the person being in between. But yeah, go ahead and just make that very clear that you'd like to have a 15-minute meeting to go over XYZ. Would they be open to that? And then you have your calendar link and it gets to be really seamless on their schedule. Right. Yeah, Catherine is like pitch slapped. It can happen. And it can be difficult to come back from a pitch slap. So that is a reason for not sending out pitches with people that you don't know in the DMs. Once in a blue moon, it can work. Someone can be like, oh my gosh, that is exactly what I need. But some people also get, the ick factor because they think, who is this person? They don't care about me. They just care about my money. So we want to care about people. And get to a place where we're not also having money be this distant thing of like, oh no, I only care about the relationship. It's okay to care about all of it. Okay, so I don't see any more questions. So I will encourage you again, go to tidycal, so tidycal.com/Stephanie Thoma, that's THOMA/clarity for your clarity call for us to chat one-on-one. And then if you're interested in staying connected on my email newsletter that comes out every week with speaking and confidence tips, then and also getting that free chapter of Confident Introvert, go to stephaniethoma.com/free chapter. And I would really like to thank the Grant Professional Summit for having me back for a second time. I have thoroughly enjoyed your engagement and getting to learn about what your questions are and what you're up to in your networking experience. And I understand that you'll get a feedback form, so feel free to share what your biggest takeaway was. And even in the chat right now, go ahead if you had a takeaway or an aha. There could be others that are like, actually, yeah, me too. This can be a nice time as we wrap up to clarify something that you're going to take away with you. So I'll begin to read those before we close in just a moment. So Catherine says that I don't have to be liked by everyone. That is the truth, Catherine. And people can come around. It's the coolest thing when you don't feed into what you think is a potential dislike. And yeah, wishing you all a beautifully connected day. And I know that you have some more sessions that you're likely to go to. So I hope that you put all these tips to work and wishing you a lot of success in your networking. You got this.